All right, Shalom. Before I begin this lesson, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Ruach Wadash. I'd like to give double honors to my teachers as well, the men whom I've learned this truth from, the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone. And as always, Shalom and salutations to the elect as well that's out there preaching this word in truth and in sincerity. My name is Shaquat. I'm one of the brothers from the branch of Great Millstone, Montreal. I'm back once again with another lesson. And this lesson that I'll be getting into today is going to be an impromptu, right? Pretty much just flowing in the spirit based off a particular thought that I had, right? And that thought that I was pretty much meditating on is the fact that, well, it was actually something that was mentioned during our class yesterday that I had with the brothers, and it was an off-camera topic, but it's edifying, and it was pretty much dealing with Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders, and going into how the Edomites, they hate the idea of any Jake that pretty much tries to rise up in a society, right? Because there's a particular stigma and an image that's put upon Jake, and Jake is pretty much boxed in, and that's strategic by Esau. That's something that Esau did. He boxed Jake into a particular image. He portrayed Jake a particular way, right? And any Jake that pretty much tries to penetrate that box and basically be out of the norm, it's irritating to Esau. It doesn't sit well with him, right? Because what's the box that he put Jake in? And when I say Jake, I'm referring to the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Jake is short for Jacob, right? And Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel when he wrestled the angel, and that name Israel means Prince of the Power, right? He had 12 sons, and those 12 sons are the Israelites. Today, they're the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. So that's the term Jake is just short for Jacob, right? But Esau hates the idea of a Jake that pretty much tries to break the algorithm. Especially those Jakes that have influence already in this society. For example, Deion Sanders, right? And I remember, as I mentioned to the brothers, I remember Deion Sanders. He changed the way college football was pretty much ran. He brought a different point of view, a different sauce, for lack of better words, to coaching. And when you see him, he doesn't present himself as right now. I don't know any other so-called black coach that pretty much did what Deion Sanders did. There might have been another one, but I'm not sure. But Deion Sanders is the only one that comes to my mind. But he brought a sauce to where, the way he ran his system at Jacksonville, at Jackson, right? Jackson State. The way he ran it was different, man. To the point where, he was getting a lot of eyes on him. The media, he was getting a lot of traction, gaining a lot of traction. And a lot of, obviously a lot of Edomite coaches, they didn't like it. And most notably the Edomites, the elites, man. It didn't sit a particular way. And then we all know that, he's still plugged in. But that idea of Jake being successful, it doesn't sit well with Esau. And that's what I'm trying to get into, right? That's pretty much the basis of this lesson. The idea of Jake being something other than a degenerate, than a dreadhead, than a driller, than a block baby, than a project baby. That does not sit well with Esau, right? Jay trying to come out of that. That does not sit well with Esau. Why? Because you'll consider him a woke Jake. Because everything that Esau is doing is pretty much to prevent us from coming back to knowing who we truly are. And we're the real nobles, man. Like I mentioned, we're the princes of the Most High, Yahweh, and His Son, Yahweh Shai. So Esau does everything, and that's why he made the box, right? He does everything in his power to keep us from being ignorant and from knowing who we actually are, right? That's why any Jake that tries to pretty much break out that box says, hey, man, that's a red flag, right? Right away. It raises red flags for Esau, right? So this is Psalms 83, and I'm going to start at verse 1. It says, keep not thou silence, O Most High, and hold not thy peace, and be not still, O Yahweh. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head, right? So the Lord has enemies, right? And that word tumult, it means a loud noise, confused noise, especially one caused by a large mass of people, right? So the enemies of the Most High make noise, right? They're making a loud noise, man, But the Lord has enemies. The Lord has enemies, and the Lord's enemies are our enemies, right? King David said, do I not count them mine enemies, right? Roughly paraphrasing that precept. But the Lord's enemies are our enemies, man, especially if you're a part of the elect, Lord willing, we'd be on that number. But if you're the elect, hey, the Lord's enemies are your enemies, and all these other nations are our enemies, man, are the Israelites' enemies. There's 18 nations on the earth, but what? 17 of them, they hate the nation of Israel, and they're the enemies of the nation of Israel, right? Verse 3, it says, they have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones, man. Yeah, and that's what they've done, man. Because something that we mentioned as well yesterday is, in the spirit, these other nations know that we're superior to them. They know that we're better than them. They know that, hey, this is a special people, man. In the spirit, they know, because it's evident. You can't deny the spirit, man, no matter what. You can't, and they know, and that's why they act a certain way towards you. That's why they might call you particular names, or turn it up a notch on the insults, man. It's because they know it doesn't rub them right that you're better than them, even though you're not doing anything at all. But they can just sense, they can sense that, this guy is he's different from me. He's special. And a part of that crafty counsel and consulting against the Lord's people is what? To keep them at bay, to keep them from knowing who they are. And this is really the one that's at the head of that is Esau, man. This so-called white man, the one that's at the head of this current rulership, man. The one that's heading the society. Verse 4, they have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance, right? So everything that Esau does, as well as these other nations, is to keep us from knowing who we are, from us coming back to the remembrance of who we are, right? So that's why when a Jake tries to break that box, or does kind of break that box of the box that Esau put us in, it raises flags for him, man. And he has to do something about it, right? It says because that another goal of Esau is try to basically wipe away the remembrance of the Israelites, man. Do away with the entire nation, but he can't, and the Lord made a deal with him. The Lord said, the Lord said, roughly paraphrasing, I believe it's in the book of Jeremiah, but the Lord said, if you can measure the heavens above and the earth beneath, then I'll do away with with Israel. But if, but that's impossible, because the heavens is vast, the earth is vast. Esau hasn't even measured or been to different places on the earth now, because they're hidden from him, man. So that goes to show you the Lord is not gonna do away with us, man. Reading on, verse 5, for they have consulted together with one consent, and they are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagarenes, right? Edom is at the top of that, right? As you can see, the Edom is the Edomites, the so-called white race, right? Gabal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre, Ashur also joined with them. They have hope in the children of Lot, Salah. Alright, so all these other nations, man, they have one agenda, and that agenda is basically to try to do away with the nation of Israel. And I'm really dealing with the ruling class, those that are at the top. Not your everyday Joe, not your everyday heathen, man. But your everyday heathen, they could sense, and they'll, they could sense that you're special. They could sense that, this guy is in the spirit, and they'll act a particular way towards you, man. But really, the ruling class, they have an agenda, right? And that agenda is to keep us from knowing who we are, to keep us from rising up, for lack of better words, man. But guess what? Little did they know that no matter what they try to do, they can't stop the Lord's agenda. And the Lord's agenda is that we are going to rise up, and that's beginning with the elect. And that we're already in the process of that. Ezekiel 37, the dry bones coming back to life. Revelation 11, right? The Lord said they should stand upon their feet. The righteous man shall stand in great boldness before the face of such as have afflicted him, right? The Lord also said that He will set us in order before the eyes of Esau, man. So this is already happening. Jake rising is already happening. The elect is already, it's already on their feet, man. The elect has already rose up and is being cleaned from the filth of Esau and the box that Esau tried to put us in. That's already being cleansed away, man. And that's through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahshai once again. And there's nothing Esau could do to stop it, because it's spiritual and Esau's a carnal man. Hey, man, so this was a short lesson, but Lord willing, was edifying to the Lord's elect. Once again, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai Ba'ashem Ruach HaKodesh. And as always, man, double honors to my teachers, the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone. And shalom to the elect as well. Until next time, shalom.